When I owned my gym, people assumed I worked out all the time because I had unlimited access and unlimited motivation, so I must be training constantly. But I had to be just as intentional about my training as anyone else, maybe even more so. I'd block out time on my calendar, I would attend specific classes, and my workouts were non negotiable. But even then, members would interrupt me mid workout to ask questions or chat. And eventually, I actually joined another gym across town just so I could train with focus and intention. Just having access to equipment doesn't make you fit. Owning a gym doesn't make you an athlete. What makes you an athlete is having a training plan and committing to it with intention, even when, especially when you're busy. And business founders face the exact same challenge. Just because you're working constantly doesn't mean you're building a sustainable, scalable business. My guest today has summited Mount Kilimanjaro, launched multiple companies and nonprofits, and now helps scale startups through TrueSpace's accelerator program in Colorado. Dr. Michael Bevis is an industrial organizational psychologist who used to manage all things related to entrepreneurship and innovation for the city and county of Denver. He's also the founder and CEO of Coolskins, a pet product company specializing in pet performance wear. Michael has previously served as a director of entrepreneurship for a variety of colleges and universities, as well as holding additional roles as dean and chief academic officer. He has started 3 nonprofits and serves as a board member for several others. He knows firsthand that whether you're climbing a mountain or building a business, you need more than hustle. You need an intentional training plan and the discipline to protect the focus required to execute it. But before we get to chatting, every episode kicks off with our listener question in a segment called Hey Coach. So, what would you ask if you had a business coach in your back pocket? Submit your question to Leslie at thefitnessofbusiness.com. Hey Coach, I'm in the early stages of launching my business and I know I should be taking care of myself, but it feels impossible to prioritize fitness and mental health when there are so many fires to put out constantly. How do I build sustainable habits without feeling like I'm taking time away from growing my company? Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to
Y-
be here.
Yeah,
Great
thanks for
introduction.
being here. I okay, so in meeting with you, in learning about you, in reading through your bio, I feel like there are a bazillion different directions we could take this conversation. However, when we met a few weeks ago for coffee, it was evident that we share a passion for fitness and wellness. And I would love to start by asking why that is so important to you.
Yeah. I think it's critical, and you know this better than anybody, your physical fitness ties directly back to your mental health and well-being. And founders go through a grind that no other human on the planet can understand or grasp unless you're right in the mix of that with everybody else. So it's important to keep it front and center. I like the fact that you're weaving in your background and your expertise in this space to help founders stay grounded in that space. One of the programs that I ran at the city of Denver was called the Scale Up Network. We helped companies in there raise hundreds of millions of dollars and create more than 3,000 jobs in the city of Denver. But a core component of that program was mental health and well-being for founders. So we
Mhm.
didn't just force feed them content and this is how you do sales better and this is how you do your marketing strategy better. We took an hour every month to pause and allow them a safe space to pause and reflect and accept the fact that running a business is hard and it's okay. And you don't have to wear your battle armor every day. And they allowed themselves to be vulnerable in a room full of other founders who are experiencing the same stresses and the same traumas. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the power of community, it's kind of like where I started in connecting the dots and making these sort of parallels and analogies that, oh my gosh, you need community. You need people around you to boost your confidence and to tell you you can do it and to say, yeah, sometimes this really sucks. And it's like, am I talking about a workout or am I talking about running a business? Both.
yeah, it's great. We live here in Colorado and, very well known for its outdoor lifestyle and activity. And I'm sure you've had many of these quote unquote coffee meetings that say, meet me at this park. We're just going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
the walking meetings is such a great thing here in Colorado. I hope other places are adopting it as well. But not only is it good for your health and your well-being and, just simply walking is doing that, but in those conversations too, I think there's more personal connection that it allows the founders to put their guard down a little bit. They're not trying to be, say the right things like a job interview. If they're
Yeah,
talking to a potential investor or a potential mentor or something like that, they get to be more candid in them true selves in that kind of environment.
yeah.
That's critical as well.
Agreed. Do you feel like you sort of came to weave that component in because of your educational background or because of what you, uh, experienced or observed or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. So just to kind of clarify on that, so I've been a founder my entire life, right? I mean, I started my first business when I was 12 because I wanted to buy a bicycle and I came from a family that couldn't afford it. So, and then I learned from that moment, like, oh, I can take control of these types of things if that's what I want or what I needed to do. I currently stay as a founder because I always say I have to practice what I preach.
Mhm.
But I know and founders who are listening, to your show right now have all probably been in a situation, especially when they're around their friends and family, when they're really struggling, and the friends and family will inevitably say something like, "Well, why don't you just go back and get a real job?" And that's just devastating, right, to your emotional state, to your ego and everything. So I knew that that was an issue. And when we do that in our programming at the city of Denver, inevitably somebody has a breakdown moment and they allow themselves to cry in front of others and that kind of stuff. And you can tell that it's something that's needed. My educational background is, in fact, my PhD is in the field of emotional intelligence. And having the opportunity to kind of understand and read people, pause and reflect and see how you can lean in and support them a little bit. So I do think that my educational background, my passion for that kind of space, helped me kind of come up with the idea around the mental health and well-being piece in that program.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I ran one of the cohorts that I ran last year. I had a woman participate, and she would be the first to admit, she's like, "Oh, Leslie, every single time I cry." And I was like, "Okay, good. That
That's
means that,
good.
it's safe here, and I'm glad that this is, you feel like you can because this is hard." And,
Yeah.
if people leave cohorts feeling nothing more than other people get it and there's commiseration, then I think that that's successful.
Yeah, 100%. Community is so critical for founders because it does feel like you're constantly out there on an island all by yourself.
Yep.
Even though you have friends and family, as an example, that might be supportive of you, they still truly don't understand because we're not in the grind on a regular basis. And other founders can just provide you that community that's so needed in that space. So what I do now at TrueSpace, I do run, so our programming is all offered online virtually. It's asynchronous. So the founders can move through the content at their own pace, but there's still that need and that sense for community. So I do that in a virtual setting. And now we have founders from all over the world that join that setting. And we run it very similar to how I ran the program at the city of Denver for that community piece.
And how do you foster that sense of community in a virtual setting? I know that's not new. Obviously we all went online during COVID and a lot of things have stayed online and there's so much access that way. But like what specific things do you try to bring in to really foster that sense of community?
Yeah, the one thing that I start every meeting with, whether it's in person or virtual, is I have the founders kind of go around and talk about a recent win that they've had because they're grinding it out so hard every day, all the time, and it feels constantly like one step forward, three steps back.
Mhm.
And I want them to kind of get in that right mindset and say, you did have wins this week, so let's talk about that and let's refocus our energy towards that piece of it because it's gonna make the rest of the conversation and the rest of the session going forward. And then the other piece is that we kind of identify a handful of the founders that are in a meeting as an example and say, "Okay, what challenges are you facing right now?" And the best value that they get from that is I don't sit there and then turn around and give them the answer. I could give them the answer because I've been doing this for an awful long time. But where the value comes in is when they're fellow founders who are part of the cohort lean in and say, you know what? I just dealt with that 3 months ago.
Yep.
And here's how I got around it. And there's so much more connection and support that just really binds the communities together. There's It's interesting because at the program I ran at the city of Denver, I do those in physical in-person programming, and there's 15 to 20 companies that are part of a cohort. Those cohorts stay together for years
Mhm.
after they complete my program.
Yeah.
So they really find their people, so to speak,
Mhm.
by being in a group like that.
And I'm curious, like, after they complete that program, those 15 to 20 people, because I agree that it's very bonding. You're in the trenches together, even if you're in completely different industries or phases. I mean, they're all startups, but different industries, certainly. How do you think they stay together? Like, what kinds of activities or intentional things do they do to maintain that?
Yeah, I'm gonna just say this, and I don't want this to sound negative, but it really is just having a community of people you can commiserate with.
Yeah.
Um, it really is because you can go home and cry on the shoulder of your supportive partner or spouse or whatever at home. They just and they can be as supportive and genuine as they truly are,
Yeah.
but you're still like, but you still kind of don't get it.
Yeah.
And so just having that support there. And they do what I love seeing about those cohorts when they stick together, because they invite me sometimes to their happy hours or their gatherings or whatever, is I love how they celebrate each other when they have a win. And you see them, posting online, because they posted on LinkedIn, I won a pitch competition, I raised my seed round, whatever the case is. And their cohorts are the first ones to respond to that and,
Mhm.
give them give them accolades and cheers and be their biggest cheerleader. So it's a really great feeling.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm curious because this is kind of an area where I struggle in terms of community. I love to create community for others. I love creating connection for others. And then sometimes I will walk away from, an event or a program that I do and I'm like, "Wait, but what about me?" I mean, that's a little bit, more whiny than I tend to be. But how do you find community in the position that you're in?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, and I'll allow myself to be a little vulnerable here.
Yes.
I've been going through some things this past year for sure, and I've been doing a little soul searching and meditation practice and things like that just to kind of ground myself a little bit. And what kind of just recently occurred to me, literally like in the last few weeks, is I'm not a good receiver.
Mm,
I'm a great giver. I
yeah.
build you programs and help you find money and lift you up in your business all day long. But I never stop and allow myself to say, like you said, what about
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Um, where can I get that support and that kind of stuff? I was recently nominated for an award, and they have you come in for an interview process, and they're like, who's somebody that you admire and that you look up to? And I reflect on it, and I'm like, I never really had a business coach myself
Mhm.
or a mentor myself in the space and the work that I do. My family certainly was not, entrepreneurs or anything like that. And so it just comes back to my mom. I mean, you mentioned
Mm.
it in my bio. She actually hiked Kilimanjaro with me.
Really?
So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's
So
amazing.
yeah, she's kind of an admirable person. She's about 4'8" and weighs like 80 pounds, but she gets the job done and she sets high goals and aspirations for herself. And I kind of follow in that footsteps.
But she was not an entrepreneur.
She was not.
She
She
sounds
was
like
the
she
exact
presented.
opposite of that. The exact
Really?
opposite of that, yeah. She worked in a corporate job in an accounting department for a majority of her career, and then the last half of her career, she was very fortunate to get a job that she really enjoyed working in the PR world of the San Diego Zoo. So she got to tour celebrity guests through the zoo and, during private hours and help get the animals to the Today Show and all that kinda stuff. So she really enjoyed that job.
That yes,
But
that is a different celebrity world than I grew up in.
Right, right.
That It probably sounds a lot more glamorous than it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, she really enjoyed it. So,
Yeah.
I was just on a recent trip to, Thailand with her, and she brought a few of her friends along with her on that trip that all worked together, um, at that job, so it was great.
That's
They're
really
all sad
cool.
and crying, "Oh, I wish we worked at the zoo again," but, you know, can't
She's
work
like, "Yeah,
forever, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah, I gotta go hike
Yeah,
a humongous mountain
yeah.
again." Um
Well, the most interesting part about the Kilimanjaro experience is that she gets elevation sickness above 7,000 feet. And
Oh,
if you're familiar with Kilimanjaro, it's almost 20,000 feet.
yes.
And, we do it over a course of 7 days, but
Right.
she was sick about every other day, but she just fights through it. She's stubborn that way. But I
Yeah.
definitely know I get from her.
Well, it's funny because, you're talking about her and naming all these qualities, and it's like, well, she possesses all the qualities of an entrepreneur, but,
She does. Yeah.
that does not necessarily mean that's what someone wants to do.
Yeah, she's minus the risk taker. She's
Mine
not a
is
huge risk taker.
hiked Mount Kilimanjaro, I would beg to differ. That sounds very risky to me. Well, my gosh, how did you come to, uh, select studying emotional intelligence for your PhD? Like, why was that important to you early on?
Yeah. So I jokingly say I have more college degrees than I like to admit in public.
Mhm.
My undergrad degree is in psychology, which jokingly I used to say that's the "I'm not sure what I want to do with my life yet"
That's
degree.
right. Yep.
Because if you're going to study that field, you can't really do a ton with it unless you take it all the way to the finish line.
Yep.
But it helped me a lot when in my early career I was in the banking and finance world, and I managed a lot of people at a pretty young age, and it really helped me kind of understand the variety of personalities and
Mhm.
motivations and different things that people take into their workspace. And then I kinda got away from that because I was getting elevated in the finance industry, and I just missed education, so I went back and I got my master's degree in finance because that's what you should do, right? You work in finance. Midway through that program, you're forced to take some courses that are outside of the core elements, and one of those courses was marketing, and I was like, "Oh, I really like this," but I'm stubborn, got that from my mom, so I finished the finance degree and then went back and got another master's degree in marketing.
Hmm.
And then at that time, I jokingly used to say, well, it's because then I could teach the CFO at the bank why it's important to spend money on marketing dollars, in bad times. So, but that really helped me accelerate my mentorship and advisory coaching, if you will, not only to my staff internally, but to the businesses I was supporting. And so I then kind of had this soul searching moment, which a lot of people do when they work in a career for a long period of time. You get burnout, you get exhausted. And I looked back and I'm like, you know what I do like though about this banking industry thing is I like teaching my clients how to run their businesses better. So they
Mhm.
had better qualifications for the loans and things they wanted from me. So I was like, let me try this teaching thing. So I went to teach at a university, and within the midway through my first course that I was teaching, my boss came in and said, "Why don't you just be the dean for my business college?"
Oh,
So
just like
I
that.
made the leap. Yeah, I made the leap, and it was great. Super passionate about it. I still teach the college level today. Um, but midway through that, they were kind of pigeonholing me, if you will, to kind of move up and become a provost at some point in the university. And they said, "But you have to have a terminal degree. You have to have a PhD." And I said, "Well, do I have to get a degree in higher education? Because I don't know I'm going to stay in higher education the whole time." And they said, "No, it can be any degree field you want as long as it's a PhD."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Okay." So that gave me the freedom to go back and say, "What am I really passionate about? Like, what do I really want to learn more about?" I
Yeah.
like leading people. I like managing people. I like supporting people through the growth of their business. So the funny thing is so I chose the PhD in industrial organizational psychology kind of for 2 reasons. One is it literally at the time was like the hardest, most enduring degree I could have gotten because it was going to take me 5 years, and it had another non-terminal master's degree requirement, and even though I tried to get that waived based on my previous experience, so now I have 3 master's degrees. But, um, what I loved about it is that people that typically go into IO Psych, they tend to come out and do one of 2 things. They typically go back and consult, in larger firms. This is how you're supposed to build up leadership, etcetera. Or they go to work for a research institution, typically in the field of marketing, like
Yeah.
consumer behavior, which 2 things I really love to do. So for me, I was like, this is what I'm going to do because if I don't stay in higher education, I can use those skill sets and I'm interested in the topic. And then in the course of those studies and studying leadership and studying this, I learned that, executive leaders, so VPs and above in corporate organizations, literally possess the lowest level of emotional intelligence of any leader in an organization. And I'm like, that's a problem I'm going to solve. So, um, and I was very effective at leading the teams that I was leading. And it kind of was like a little bit of like, why was I good at that? And so I
Mhm.
kind of realized like, oh, I'm kind of good at this kind of thing. So I wove that into the field of study, but and I built a test example, if you will, and proved out that we can, in fact, improve the emotional intelligence of executive leaders and have it stick. So at the time when I
Yeah.
did my study, there was nothing on the market. There's a ton of, take this 2-week course and that kind of stuff. But the research shows that none of the emotional intelligence quotient stayed elevated longer than 2 weeks after the completion of the programming. So my
Wow.
study showed 6 months in that they still had an increased level of emotional intelligence, so
Huh. That is fascinating. Um, did you face a lot of resistance from executives at that level who, if they already don't possess very high EQ, then they don't know that they need to?
yeah, I mean, you always get that, right? I mean, you get the typical thing, and I did do some consulting in some larger Fortune 500 companies and stuff for a little while. I kind of liken this if you're familiar with young, ambitious college students who study the field of accounting, and they're gonna go work for one of these big firms, right? You end up in 2 buckets. You either gonna be on the audit side or you're gonna be on the tax side. And if you've ever talked to any of those students who ended up on the audit side, they hate their lives because they work a ton of hours, but they have to go in and ask these executives for, like, "Give me your information," and they're like, "I don't have time for you." And that's kinda how it is with emotional intelligence. It's like, I need you to take this survey so I can have a baseline, and then I can say, "This is where you rank. Let's go
Yeah.
through this kind of programming or support." So it's pretty resistant on that side.
Yeah.
And again, back to the accountants, if you're on the tax side, you're the CEO's best friend because 'cause you're teaching them how to save money.
Right.
So if I could what I had to do was kinda teach those executives, like, "I can get your team to perform better if you
Mm,
can behave better." So, once they kinda see that a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So,
yeah.
I can always tie it back to, like, bottom line results.
Well, right. Which is hard to do. Like, that's like not a small feat to be able to tie something that can seemingly or can seem so like esoteric or non quantifiable or and then to
Yeah.
tie it back to a bottom line. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, I want to talk about your startup and your scale up accelerators and
Okay.
sort of how you developed them and who you started working with and who you work with now and sort of that evolution.
Sure. For the last 8 years, basically, I've been the head of innovation and entrepreneurship for the city of Denver. So, first person ever in that role. The city was kinda like, "We know we need this. We're not sure what we need, but we know we need it." And I had recently built an entrepreneurship program at a university here in Colorado that got a lot of notoriety, and so
Mm.
that's the city reached out and said, "Gonna create this position. We'd like you to apply for it." So I did, and great, and I really enjoyed the work. In the course of my time there, I raised over $70 million to create programming and supports for early stage entrepreneurs, all outside of the dollars from the city. So they were grants, corporate philanthropy, that kind of thing. But so what I used to say is it was my job, to create the ecosystem here that allows entrepreneurs to thrive. And what that means to me is I'm here to connect the entrepreneurs to the resources that currently exist. And if they don't exist, I create them. So as an example, I would refer businesses to you all the time because you offer a particular service for a business at a certain stage, and it makes perfect sense. Versus me saying, "Well, I can go out and create a program just as good as Leslie's and blah blah blah." Why would I do that? So, and Colorado is so great in the form of collaboration. That's the number one word you'll hear from people visit Denver in this ecosystem around the world. They're like,
Yeah.
no place was as collaborative. Colorado when we came there. So I'm proud of that fact of it. But so a lot of the money that I raised as an example, I would push through to nonprofits that run existing accelerators that are different than what exists. I mean, we have all the world renowned accelerators, the tech stars, the plug and plays, the generators, those kinds of things, and those are fantastic programs. Those programs are not a great fit for everybody,
Mhm.
and so other opportunities that we could create for them. So I created a free entrepreneurship center, so people that are early stage that, wanna be in a co-working space but can't quite afford the rent, we can provide that to you for free. We do a ton of events in there.
Yep.
Run a program currently, I'm not running it, but one of the nonprofits that I identified runs it called the Inclusive Impact Catalyst, so it helps businesses get what we quote, unquote, "capital ready."
Mhm.
So help them build out their pitch deck, their business plan, their story, and get them access to capital.
Mhm.
So, really early stage capital. So that's great. I ran a program that was 3 years long called Tech Up. So that kind of included like a pre accelerator, a standard accelerator, and then a post accelerator, like my
Mm.
scale up program.
Yeah.
Did that in partnership with the local university here and a nonprofit and the city of Denver. So that was great. And then what would happen in the course of all of that is I would get these phone calls from people. I still get these phone calls and I welcome them all the time from people all around the world who are trying to build ecosystems in their local community. Say, how did you build that program? How did you do this? How did you do that? Where did you get that money? I'm happy to share that information and guide them where I can. I've known so now I'm over at I'm the executive vice president at a private company called TrueSpace. And in essence, what TrueSpace does is they offer a scale-up program, like a post-accelerator program. I've known them for close to 10 years. They're heavily researched back. So this is not what I love about them is it's not like a coaching or a consulting practice where somebody goes in and says, well, this worked for me when I was a founder, or this worked for another client that I worked with. It's science-based.
Mhm.
And so it's driven off of 13 years worth of research, thousands of companies, and the science is validated through Gallup, the big research institution on the East Coast. And so we know that it's sound, and I can predict with certainty your company's capability of scaling. We have a framework that walks them through that process. So it's, there's no bias in it,
Yeah.
right? It's not my ability to coach you. It's not your ability to receive coaching from me. It's this is what your business is telling us.
Mhm.
This is what needs to be fixed. If you want to do the fixing, it's great. Love as an example, the name of your business and your background in fitness, because we kind of use this as an analogy when we're talking to companies in the discovery phase is look, you go to the gym and you hire a private coach, they're not going to lift the weights for you and you're not going to see your body transform.
That's right.
Like, I'm the coach. I'm the coach. I have the tools and I have the weight room. Do you wanna come in and do the work?
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of work, right? The average company spends 1 to 2 hours a week on
Mm.
our content.
Mm.
And that's intentional because what they are running a business, and we know that, and we want them to be, in that space. And so that's how it works. The model is really simple. A founder spends, $400 a month to be in our program. Takes them 6 to 12 months to get through the work. They get kind of
Mhm.
what we call certified. In that process, then we open up what we call the exchange. And so on the exchange, we have investors, hundreds of investors who understand the science and say, this is a lower risk investment for me because I can see that this founder put in the work. Let's chat. So that's helping them, and that's the whole goal of TrueSpace is we're founded by serial successful entrepreneurs. We know there's a gap in the ecosystem. So in the United States alone, there's 2.3 million businesses that fall into this gap. So the term TrueSpace means the space starting between starting and scaling. That's what we're here to solve. ultimately for TrueSpace at the end of the day, if we can change the lens of the capital markets to say these are good companies, we should be investing in them in some capacity
Yeah.
at an earlier stage, then we've won because at 400
Yeah.
bucks a month, we're a break even company. So, and that's okay. But what I was tying this all back to is the reason why I made the leap to go into TrueSpace is because TrueSpace now gives me a tool that I
Mhm.
can give to all those ecosystem partners around the globe that say, I wanted that thing that you built in Denver, Michael, but I can't
Yeah.
afford it. I don't know how to run it. Can now give that to you for free as an ecosystem partner, and you just help kind of drive companies towards it, and you get to see the results. So companies we work with as an example, 9 out of 10 of them achieve the capital that they're trying to raise that they wanted to is by the time they complete our program, and they see an average increase in their top line revenue of 25% year over year,
Wow.
which ultimately means they're creating jobs. So those ecosystem partners, right? It's like about how much capital do we bring into our local ecosystem and how many jobs were created as a result of that work. Literally, our content just lays on right over the top of anything else that they're currently doing.
Yeah. Quick pause. I was that kid in school whose notes everyone wanted to borrow before the test. Color coded, organized, the whole deal. I'm still doing it, but now for entrepreneurship instead of AP Bio. My Substack is basically me sharing my notes with you. The podcast gives you the big ideas. My Substack shows you how to implement them. Step by step guides, templates, and real stories from the trenches. Subscribe for free at leslieboyce.substack.com. That's LESLIEBOYCE. And let's take this from theory into practice. Because knowing you should hit the gym and actually getting there to do the reps are two very different things. It's really cool. First of all, I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, it's so methodical and well thought out, and yeah, it's really cool. I would love to know what are the like most common areas of improvement that businesses will come in and identify. Are they pretty typical, or does it vary?
Yeah.
Or
I can pinpoint it for you.
yeah,
So, again, 13 years worth of research,
yeah,
millions of dollars spent on doing this diving in. We built what we built is what we call a 12 systems framework. So if you think of the human body as an example, it has 11 systems that allow us to learn about it, diagnose, and treat it, right? And that's been effective in the hospital systems for dozens of years. We did the same thing basically with business. We've identified 12 systems in the business that we can learn from, diagnose, and treat. And the number one thing that is an identifier of a company's capability of scaling is how the founder spends their time in the business.
cool.
So a majority of founders, as an example, are still spending most of their time doing direct sales, customer relationship management. They're putting out all the fires, right? And you know this, like, I don't have time to work out, Leslie. I don't have time to come to a cohort meeting. It's like you don't have time to not do that. So the number one thing that we do in the course of our framework is shift how they spend their time in the business.
Mm.
So Gallup helped us develop. So we have kind of three scoring systems. So when companies come to us, they take an initial assessment, um, gives us kind of a baseline. It's not like a scorecard. It's not like a pass fail kind of thing. It's like this is just where you're at
Yeah, just
in your
information.
business at this
Mhm.
time across these 12 systems. We can drill down into each one of those systems and say what needs to be fixed there. But we have this kind of image, this chart that we show where typical founder will say, this is how you're spending time in the business. Again, most of it's in that upper left segment of where it shows that you're just doing all the sales and all the operations and all the management. And a benchmark company, which is where we want to ultimately drive companies to, because that's the metric that Gallup helped us identify that said, if you're in the benchmark category, you will in fact scale. We
Mm.
can prove it. And we're driving companies towards that benchmark. But when you look at that same information and that same graph for a benchmark company, that founder spends probably less than 5% of their time in direct sales and customer relationship management. They spend a majority of their time on talent development and culture building in their business. And we help them with all of that.
And do you work with any solopreneurs or really, really small teams?
We do work with solopreneurs. Um, it just depends on the type of business. I just signed on a business yesterday as an example. She's been in business as a solopreneur for close to 20 years, couple $1 million a year business. She's been stagnant in her sales for a couple of years, and so she's looking for something to support there. We can do that. Her business model is very unique and different. Oftentimes, I work with dozens of solopreneurs across all different industries. A lot of my scale up companies, as an example, are solopreneurs, and I use TrueSpace as part of scale up now. But um, the interesting thing is, like, when they're taking our survey, they're like, "Well, I felt like a lot of that information didn't pertain to me because, I don't have a team or I don't have this, I wear all the hats," that kind of thing. But our psychometric measurement tool actually helps kind of account for that. The curriculum can be extremely useful. The best thing for me, especially when this happens in these cohort meetings, as an example, is I have these solopreneurs that have now been with me 3, 4 months. Say, as an example, they're part of the cohort and they come to that cohort meeting and they say, I hired somebody.
Mm.
I hired somebody because the curriculum just keeps telling me I got to take this off my plate. I got to take this off my plate. And then 3 more people will chime in and said, I did that last month too. And it's been the greatest thing ever. So they're scared right at that stage. You're like, I can barely afford my own salary. How can I afford the salary of somebody else? And you just see incrementally in such a short period of time how once you free up that time to focus on other aspects of the business starts to grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we try to highlight with the work that we do. We're building scaling companies. I'm not trying to build unicorns and, billion-dollar companies overnight to make some investor wealthy. That's not what we're doing. We're building long-term sustainable companies.
Yeah.
And the thing is that what I try to highlight for people, and we could show you this with the data, is like your company got bigger, but you
Mm.
didn't get better.
Mhm.
Like, I went from a $10 million company to a $30 million company, but you're not more profitable. You're not more this, you're not more that, right? And what we're building is real scale.
Yeah.
It's incrementally, we're increasing all of the metrics when you do that. So
Yeah.
that's the part that I think is really important for people to understand.
Mhm. Right, you don't, buy a bunch more gym equipment or heavier dumbbells and just say, "Oh, I got stronger," but you didn't actually lift them.
Right, right.
I mean, it's
And that's what I love about the work that you're doing, and why I think we have this opportunity here for this great partnership, is because you're giving those founders that you work with the foundational
Mhm.
tools that they
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
on that front end, and now you help them get off to the races and really start to make some improvements in their business, and then they get stuck again, and that's okay. That's part of the journey, but that's where we can then come in, at a later stage and say with our science, like, "Okay, here's what needs to be fixed," right? And that's common. That should be a common journey for founders, just to constantly seek out that mentorship and that coaching and that advice. You can't get everything from one person, and you have to grow beyond that. I mean, if I'm an athlete as an example, or if I'm trying to be a bodybuilder as an example, typically my coach can only take me so far, right? And then I gotta bring in some more expertise. Now I need a nutritionist. Now I need a this. Now I need a that, right?
Yep.
So that should be the journey of a founder.
Yeah, because you can have all the motivation in the world and a decent plan, and yet there are going to be these constant, things thrown at you, the fires to put out that, uh, detract from your focus, or like you said, you stall, you get stuck, or you think, oh wait, but maybe this is a better way to go, and it's like it is so easy to just go, down a
It's
rabbit hole or
Yeah, it's
spin.
very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to get stuck and then get frustrated with that stuckness. And this is what I constantly coach, especially in my one-on-one coaches with founders, is stop getting distracted.
Mhm.
You have all the ideas in the world, and that's great, and I love that passion. But let's be honest, you'll never be able to execute on any of those ideas if you don't stay focused. So
Yes.
let's pick the top 3 things we're gonna work on
Yeah.
and nail that. And
Yeah.
once you nail that, then you can add 3 more things in if you want, but you can't do 15 things at once. So let's get focused.
That's right. And, I know for me, and I've talked about this in so many different conversations that I've had on the podcast, off the podcast,
Yeah.
is that like this has taken a long time and a lot of intentionality for me to stop pursuing every new idea that comes to mind, or not even pursuing it, but just thinking, "Oh, well, maybe that's a little bit better than what I'm doing. I should try that." And I'm, like, intentionally taking 2026 to stay really focused, but it is really hard.
Yeah. And I think that's important, especially for you. I mean, you're building your business, right? As an example. And you're gonna constantly go through those phases of like, why can't I get customers? Or why aren't there more clients coming to me or whatever the case is? So you're like short term, and you know this better than anybody as a fitness person. You got to keep doing the exercise. You can't see the body transformation
Yep.
because you lifted the dumbbell one time. Like that's not how it works,
That
right?
would be
You got
I would have
you
been
got to
out of a
build your
job
routine.
years ago, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta build your routine and you gotta do that, and this is the frustrating part for early stage founders especially is you might have to commit it's the same as working out. You gotta commit 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 months of doing something consistently before you start to see the results, but what I can tell you from a life of experience is that stick to itiveness will yield results, and so when I was in the banking industry, I tell this story frequently the last portion of I did basically everything you could do in the finance industry, but the last portion of my career, last few years of my year, I was doing commercial lending, and I was doing 6 times more volume than the next highest person in our division. They're like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "My phone just rings. Like, you're out there knocking on doors." I It took me time to build up this network and these things. So and I'm a trusted, banker for
Mhm.
these people who keep growing and building their businesses. So who are they gonna call first? They're gonna call me.
Yeah.
But it took time to get
Mhm.
there. But once you get there and you're gonna experience this too, and I can't wait to cheer you on when that happens. You're gonna be like, Michael, I need help scaling because there's only one of me. What am
Oh,
I gonna do?"
that'll be
Right?
awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Because you
know
can't be all places at all times. So
no, and I kinda wanna go back to what you were saying about, putting in the reps and yes, all the fitness analogies. My husband, recently sent me an article. I haven't read the whole thing, but I got the gist of it, and it was fascinating because it was basically like the difference between someone who looks strong and someone who is strong. And, you look at bodybuilders or Olympic weightlifters, I was in the Olympic weightlifting world for a while, and they might not be as like jacked and ripped and,
yeah.
vein, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of the type of training that they do. But my goodness, they can lift a lot of weight. So
Right.
these sort of like the notion, I guess, to make the business analogy of like these vanity metrics of, oh, well, how many followers do you have or how much engagement do you have? Well, that may not mean anything. And I think that it was just like a really striking analogy for me.
Well, like in the world that you're in a lot of spaces, having followers and, your likes and your social media presence, all that stuff is great. But what people fail to execute on with that is that's fine to do that. But first of all, is there a conversion that's happening as a result of that? Now, in your world, as an example, it could be just great just to be a subject matter expert and educate people. That's great. And if it never results in a conversion to a sale, that's okay. But how much of your time are you spending on that? That's the first thing I want to know. The second thing is, and I think people forget this, is having a strong, say, social media presence, as an example, or having something like that gives you so much more leverage when you're trying to create partnerships. So a business like yours, as an example, would be perfect to do what we call joint ventures, right? Find people that are offering similar services with a similar audience that you want to do and say, how do we partner together? And the first thing that's going to work to your advantage is say, I got 2,500 followers.
Mhm.
That's way more valuable than you chipping away at trying to get little conversions, right? So it's not a lost cause to get those followers and get that piece of it. But you got to use that to leverage future partnerships. Because if you went in there and said, I got 25 followers, they're like, cool, come back and talk to me in 6 months, or whatever. Or like, because that's not helping their business, right? We just launched a partnership, TrueSpace last week with a group, an international group, and they got 3,000 businesses that are a perfect fit for us. And they're like, we'll open that network to you if you open your network to us. It's like,
Yeah.
perfect, because you offer a service we don't offer. And I don't want to build that service. So
Yeah.
let's do that. And so now we're cross referring businesses to each other, right? But if I went in there and said, I just signed up 18 companies and that's where we started, and they're like, okay, it sounds good. We like what you do, but we're
Yeah.
not going to get as much in return. So
Yep.
so you got to use that to your advantage. And there is the other piece of it is just the consistency of it. And you are a subject matter expert. You're very knowledgeable in the work that you do, not only in the fitness world but in the business world. And if people think like, I got to go to the fitness business first thing in the morning to learn what I need to learn for the day,
Mhm.
that's important.
Yeah, it is. Um, and I think the other sort of vanity or maybe misperception that people can get bogged down with is, like you were saying, someone who uh, their revenue went from 10 million to 30 million. That looks amazing on paper, but
Right.
then what does that actually mean? So,
Right.
just
I mean,
trying
and
not.
we've all heard somebody say, "Yeah, I made $1 million in my business last year." I'm like, okay, but how much did you spend?
Right, right. I
Well,
know.
actually, we lost $30,000,
Yeah,
but, it sounds good to say I made $1 million in revenue, but
it
that
does.
doesn't tell me anything.
It does. It's
Yeah,
shiny and impressive until you
yeah. It
actually
tells
actually.
me you have some customers.
Yeah,
They're interested in what you're selling. That's
right.
good,
Yeah,
but I don't know how efficiently you're running that business.
right, right.
Yeah.
Um, you are a very busy person. You do a lot of things. How do you prioritize your fitness? You talked a little bit about the mental health piece and adding in some meditation and making that a little bit more deliberate. But how do you prioritize and make non-negotiable your wellness?
That's an important question, right? And I jokingly say, because people always say, "How do you do all the things you do?" And I used to jokingly say, like, "Oh, it's easy. All I have to do is cut out sleep." Which is a joke, of course, and obviously not good for your health. But so I'm very much a routine
Mhm.
person. So rain, shine, snow, whatever, it doesn't matter. I get up every morning before the sun comes up and I go on a 3-mile walk. Um, doesn't matter, year round. That's how I start my day. I involved in a lot of social activities that involve fitness. So I do a lot of bike riding, and I ride with groups, and I play a lot of volleyball, which is part of a team. So that helps me from a physical fitness standpoint. I've never been a person who likes to go to the gym. I don't like to be isolated, I guess, when I'm just doing exercise, but I understand the value of that. And I understand that that works great for a lot of people. I guess my feedback to them is be consistent with it, right? Because it's easy, you know this all too well. Like I got to do it first thing in the morning because that's their schedule, and that's good. I always would recommend that. Is how your schedule gets out of control at the end of the day.
Oh, forget it.
Um,
Yeah.
so make it the first thing, make it the priority. I do a little bit of weight training or resistance training in my house, but my goal is if it takes me longer than 10 minutes, I don't want to do it. So, and I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder or anything like that. I'm just trying to not I'm trying to not have to need a walker, in the next couple of years. But I'm intentional with that, right? So, and you and I talked about this. I love the idea of you kind of kicking off your sessions with that. That's in some cases that's all people need, right?
Yeah.
And that consistency of it is the factor.
Mhm.
And and then I do a 10-minute meditation and then a 10-minute stretch every day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Obviously when I had my gym, people would come classes at all different hours. The 5:30 AM crew was by far the most dedicated and most consistent, which is not to say the others were not dedicated and consistent, but it was
yeah,
like, yeah, I mean, it did not matter if schools were all shut down because of a snowstorm, like that 5:30 crew was there.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm one of them. I cannot if it's past 9 or 10 AM, I'm not gonna work out. It's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
It's hard, the day just starts to get away from you. I mean,
It
it
does.
happens to all of us. It doesn't matter if you work a corporate job or if you're a founder. You're like, I didn't have that meeting on my calendar.
Yeah.
Didn't know this was going to happen. And then the next thing you know, that's what you sacrifice. And then,
Yep.
and you know this, it's so hard to get back into a routine once you've fallen out of it for only,
It
take
is.
they say 22 days to create a habit, and it takes like 12 hours to to lose all that, right? So whatever it is, a couple of days, and it's hard to get back to that routine. So
It's very hard.
I mean, there's so many things I could make the argument for that consistency matters.
Yeah,
In your business building, in your physical, your mental health, like
yes.
consistency matters.
Consistency and just going into it knowing that it is this long game, that
Yeah.
you're not going to do resistance training for 10 minutes and be a bodybuilder or even for 10 years potentially and be a
Right.
bodybuilder. And that's okay because what are your true goals? I mean, I used to do CrossFit, 6 days a week and I would be beside myself on that 7th day because I forced myself to take a rest day and I was like, but I'm gonna lose out, and I mean, I loved it,
Right.
so part of it was
Right.
just, like, I genuinely enjoyed the workouts, but, now I do strength training 3 days a week, I walk the other days, I do a little bit of running, and I am like, "Okay, this I can maintain. This
Yeah.
does not make me feel like I'm gonna need a walker in a couple of years."
Good. Yeah. It's good to mix it up too, right? You don't have to
Yeah,
do the same type of activity every day as long as you're just doing something.
that's right, that's right.
I think that matters. Yeah. And we see that here at TrueSpace as an example is that the founders that we work with that are consistent as far as when they get in and do the work
Yeah,
every Monday morning, I carve out an hour, I knock it out. They're the
mhm,
ones that do the best as far as progressing through the curriculum and getting to that capital sooner.
yeah,
Ones that are like, "Oh, I just got busy today and I didn't do it, but I'm gonna do 4 hours on Saturday, I promise." And I'm like, "Okay." And
yep,
Saturday comes around and they're like, "No, I'm not working today."
yes.
It's like so it's, it's different for each person, but we can definitely both attest to the fact that consistency matters.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, first of all, where can people find you? What are you, when is your next cohort starting? And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I run cohorts, but you can basically start on the TrueSpace platform anytime you want.
Mm.
So you call up, we have a conversation. If you're a good fit and it sounds good to you, we just sign you up when you're ready. You take an assessment. Takes you about 40 minutes to complete the assessment. Then we schedule a follow-up call so I can review the results of the assessment, and then we open up the curriculum. As part and then what happens is I give you the option to be added to a cohort. There's no additional cost or anything for that, and you get a calendar invite, and you show up to the cohorts, and we get you introduced and moving forward. We typically keep the cohorts around 40 businesses, and then we'll just make new cohorts as the businesses come in so that everybody's voice can be heard in that session. It's easy to run a meeting with 150 people, but not everybody's having their voice heard. So that's why we keep the cohorts small. As I mentioned, it's $400 a month, so it's pretty simple. You only pay for it while you're in the platform. So when you complete the work, if you don't want to stay with it, that's fine. Most businesses actually stay with us for about 3.5 years
Mm.
because they get so much
Wow.
value from the system.
Yeah.
But you can learn more about the platform and what we do at truespace.com or reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to schedule a discovery call at my first initial M, my last name, Bevis, Bevis, at truespace.com.
Yes, and I will link it all in the show's notes.
Great.
Well, so I start every episode with our "Hey Coach" question, and I like to end every episode by asking my guest if you so we talk about how running a business is basically like a workout. So if you
Mhm.
could go back and improve one strength or habit from the very beginning, what would it be?
We talked about this a little bit. I mean, as I mentioned, as the science proves to us, how you spend your time in the business matters. And early stage founders get so lost so quickly, and it's actually because of trying, not lack of trying. And a lot of founders, they're kind of learning. You've heard this analogy, right? We're building the plane as we're learning to fly it, kind of thing. It's true, but the thing that you and I touched on in our conversation was distraction, getting distracted. And I teach some very early stage entrepreneurship for like people that are at the ideation phase for like creatives through the Museum of Contemporary Art, folks in the LGBTQ community. And the number one thing I say to them is keep things in buckets of three
Mm,
because you have all these amazing ideas and none of them are bad, but you can't execute on any of them.
yep.
So if you can't stay focused and let's just go you got 15 things you want to do. That's great. Let's just accomplish one, then two, then three, then reset. Now which 3 take the next top priority, right? So staying focused in that space is really critical,
Yeah.
because ultimately what you're doing from the very beginning is preserving how you spend your time in the business.
Yeah.
Be humble and accept the fact that you should not be a subject matter experts in all area of your business, and hire the competency around you that takes that off your plate.
Yes. All of it. And
Yeah.
I will add to not just hire people who can do certain tasks and skills better than you because they exist and it's okay that you're not good at all of
Yeah.
them. But in terms of like being especially in the ideation phase, being able to seek out the support and feedback from an objective source to help you develop that clarity. I think that is a piece that is so crucial and missing because like I can't be objective about my own business. Nobody can.
Right.
So if you
And
don't
I actually say that to every single, class that I teach. The first piece of homework that they do is to go out and talk to 100 people they don't know,
Mm.
because their friends and family will always say, "That's a great idea, you should do it."
Yeah.
And if you go talk to 100 people you don't know, they don't know you, so they're gonna be like, "What? What is that?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't get it." Or,
exactly.
"That's cool, I would buy that," you know?
Yeah.
That's
But
the
you
kind of
didn't,
feedback you
right.
need to hear, right? So, like, when I built up Cool Skins as an example, I'm passionate, obviously, about my animals, and I created the business because a friend of mine's dog died from heat stroke, and as a passionate dog owner, I'm like, who knew that was a thing, right? And
Yeah.
so when I built it, I'm like, "Okay, I finally got it to a point where it works for my dogs, but those are just my dogs."
Mhm.
So I literally sent it out to 150 people around the world that I didn't know,
Mm.
and I said, "Just try this thing." And they
Yeah.
were like friends of friends of friends, right? Like people I've never met before.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, I'll try it." And they would just write back and say, "It works exactly like you said it did,
Hmm.
and it fits, and my
Yeah.
dog likes it." And I was like, "Great."
Yeah.
So then I knew I had something there, and I
Yeah.
could go to market with it, because if you just only test it on yourself, or you test it on your spouse, or whatever the case is, you don't know what the market's gonna do with that, and that's the number one thing, investors will say to you is, "Tell me who really wants to buy this thing."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
the proof of concept has to be outside of your immediate friends and family. It sort of reminds me that, I remember, on Facebook, people wish you happy birthday, right? That you get a little
yeah,
prompt that says, "Wish so and so a happy birthday."
right,
And every year, my mom would call me and be like, "You had so many people wish you a happy birthday." And I was like, yeah, they're not all, like, close friends of mine. I mean, I loved
right.
that she thought I was, like, so popular, but, that's kinda what it reminds me of, like, okay, that is a very, myopic, view. Let's expand from there, so
Yeah,
I
yeah, that's
appreciate
an
that
excellent
perspective.
analogy, I love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I feel like we could
Yeah,
we could go on and on, so maybe I'll have to have you back another time if if you have time
sure.
in your schedule.
Yeah, would love to do it. So, however I
Okay.
can help, and I appreciate you making time to chat with me.
Yeah, and you too. And for those listening, make sure you like, you subscribe, you share this with a friend, and submit your questions to Leslie at thefitnessofbusiness.com. We'll see you next time.